Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. It's the Royal Weekly Show from Mail Plus, recorded just down the road from Kensington Palace. I'm Jo Elvin and my panel this week is Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine, feature writer Guy Adams and the Mail on Sunday's diary editor Charlotte Griffiths. And this is what we have coming up for you this week. Well, you can try arguing with the Queen, but you will fail, as Meghan and Harry are told they cannot use the Sussex Royal brand. We hear from royal expert Hugo Vickers and ask what's next for the Transatlantic power couple. And Kate's Blue period. We analyse the Duchess's choice of style and the people speak. We've been out on the streets getting your thoughts on all things regal. But first, a not quite so happy birthday to Prince Andrew. The Queen's favourite son turned 60 this week against the backdrop of the news that he had been partying with another accused sex offender, Canadian billionaire Peter Nygard. On top of that, reports have suggested that his birthday had a few more rejections than he had hoped for. So how do you solve a problem like Prince Andrew? Well, we asked publicist Mark Bukowski.
I think the idea of PRing Prince Andrew back into public life is one of the most impossible thoughts any human can have. It clearly is over for him, and the negative narrative hangs over like a nasty spell. I think it's now what he does in retirement. He is not someone who is fit for a PR campaign. The royal family has always really managed crises and ups and downs. It's always been a V, good days, bad days, never complain, never explain. Media world is different now. They certainly have to find a new narrative because there seems to be one negative story after another. And clearly there isn't any sparkling news on the horizon like a royal birth or a marriage. So it's going to be tough to think about how they're going to get to the other side. But the royal brand is very powerful. It's managed crisis before. So Guy, you wrote the piece on Peter Nygard. Do you get the impression that the Prince is slightly lax with his due diligence on his friends?
Well, the short answer is yes. The long answer is yes, but we already knew that, didn't we? Peter Nygard is a sort of larger-than-life fashion entrepreneur. He owns a number of, I think about a dozen high street brands in Canada. He's made loads of money, and he spent that money in all sorts of very colourful ways. He's got a private jet that he travels around the world with, which has a stripper's pole in the cabin. He's got this enormous sort of party palace in the Bahamas. He's got houses all over the place, and he likes to surround himself with, and has always liked to surround himself with young and very pretty women. And no one quite knows why Prince Andrew visited his place in 2000. We don't know whether he stayed or whether he just came for tea or something. But at the time, he was a full-time royal. Well, he was sort of still in the Navy, but he was a working member of the royal family. He was with his wife and children. And you'd have thought, wouldn't you, if someone rich rings you up and says, "Would you like to come to my place and hang out?" You might just do a few checks, find out sort of who they are, why they might have invited you, what they want to see you for, and sort of behave accordingly. And of course, Prince Andrew's never done that, and it's a similar story in all sorts of ways with Jeffrey Epstein. And that, what attracted Prince Andrew to Jeffrey Epstein? Well, it was his money. And this has always been the Prince's great weakness, and I'm afraid this is another example of a sort of embarrassing situation that he's got himself into because he's failed to sort of stop and think. And,
don't laugh when I ask this, but are we expecting him to make any comment on this or to come out and defend himself?
Well, in fairness to Prince Andrew, there is a difference between there's two differences between Peter Nygard and Jeffrey Epstein. The first thing is that Mr. Nygard has been accused of all sorts of slightly ugly charges of sex abuse and rape, but he hadn't been convicted of any of those at the time Prince Andrew visited him, although he had paid off a number of female employees who'd claimed that they'd been mistreated at work. Whereas
sounds like a stand-up guy.
Right. But also, the other thing you've got to say about Peter Nygard is that As far as we know, Prince Andrew only visited him once.
Okay.
Well, with Jeffrey Epstein, he invited him to Balmoral, he invited him to Buckingham Palace, he stayed at his house.
But Sarah, I mean, any politician with this whiff around them would be out on their ear, right?
Well, yes, I mean, except that it did happen a long time ago, didn't it? I think Andrew, obviously, we're now sort of starting to see that Andrew had quite a bad period where he was obviously not thinking very straight and behaving rather stupidly.
Prince without portfolio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's a sort of, it's difficult. It's going to, again, as with the Epstein stuff, it's very difficult to prove any of this stuff. It's all just sort of, it's all very unpleasant circumstantial evidence, isn't it? There's no actual proof of any of this. And I think that, but I think one of the reasons that the mud sticks so badly to Andrew is that he himself is so famously entitled and so arrogant and so rude to people that he has a sort of reputation that precedes him. And I think just people putting two and two together, and it's just forming an image of a person who's not terribly nice, not terribly clever, doesn't choose his friends wisely, all of that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, choosing your friends, let me play devil's advocate. I mean, Charlotte, you can't always know everything about all your friends. What's your view?
Well, he had a volcano on his island, so that seemed to have been part of it. He has loads of joke novelty stuff on his island, doesn't he,
What do you
Peter?
mean, of
he has this
Thunderbird
volcano,
Island?
a pretend volcano that spits out...
It's a pretend one.
Several.
Yes, and he has a sort of snake that spits out all sorts of things. It was like it sounds like a dodgy Disneyland. And the sad thing is, he took Beatrice and Eugenie with him. So I don't know if he just thought it'd be novelty to go and hang out on this bizarre island for a day.
It's also got to be probably one of the most unfortunately timed birthdays in recent history.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most of the royal accounts still put out a perfunctory happy birthday. Was that the right thing to do?
I don't know why he even bothered having a party. I mean, you don't have to have a party for your 60th. Why not just leave it for a couple of years and then have a nice belated one when all of this has been sorted out?
I think he's still living the fantasy
that's
that he's...
the point. That's my point.
His
character is such that he doesn't see any reason why he shouldn't have a 60th birthday party, despite the fact that he's got a lot of very nasty questions hanging over his character. And I think that says a lot about his character.
I keep asking this and it keeps getting worse, but how does he dig out of this hole?
It's not going to go away unless he takes control of it. He needs to take control of the situation, and he needs to say, OK, you want to talk to me about this, let's do that. He needs to, respond, basically confront that period of his life, get it all out in the open, clear it up, move on.
I think that could surely backfire very badly.
How could it get any worse?
Well,
that's an interesting question. Let's see.
Can it get any worse?
Well, he's got more of this to come in May because he's got his daughter's wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's talk now that they're not going to take photos inside Buckingham Palace because it's too embarrassing.
But that's why he needs to get it done over
his interview.
But that's why he needs to do it now, so that it doesn't ruin his poor daughter's wedding.
I do feel sorry for her.
He needs to get it sorted before her wedding, otherwise it's just going to
and what about
destroy that as well.
This question of Labour leader hopeful Lisa Nandy saying that she would call a referendum on whether or not we even have the royals. I mean, what would this situation with Andrew do to the public psyche on that?
I don't think this country needs another referendum. No, I think we've done that.
Yeah, I agree with you, but a lot of people might disagree.
Most of the polling shows that the Queen is incredibly popular, doesn't it? It's only sort of peripheral royals that there's only a question of. I mean, of course, the royal family, is coming up to a massive crisis because, Philip is of a certain age, the Queen is of a certain age, so this is going to all play out in the next 5 years, I would imagine.
Yeah,
and all be huge decisions on Charles's watch, I imagine.
Exactly. There's all going to be all sorts of decisions. I mean, I think for the royal family, it's very good that we have a majority Conservative government, because if we had returned a Labour government, I think they'd be in real trouble at the moment.
That's
actually.
interesting. Yeah.
But for them, they know they've got pretty much 5 years to kind of get all their ducks in a row and to sort their house out.
Do you really think a Labour government would try and do anything about the royals?
Well, I mean, Corbyn is a Republican.
Yeah, but do you think he'd have been a Republican Prime Minister?
I think he would have been.
They had a pretty radical agenda, which I think is why they didn't win.
And given that the royal family, with the exception of the Queen and Charles and William and Kate, are in a difficult situation. They have got some problems, haven't they? So,
Anyway, it's so interesting, isn't it? We must move on. But happy birthday, Prince Andrew, from me, heartfelt. As always, we've turned to the people to get your thoughts on the matter.
Well, they've left us. They've gone to Canada or America. They don't want to participate in any royal events, so why should they have the royal title?
I think I do agree with it, purely because of their decision to step back and to not want to be a part of it. So if you don't want to be a part of it, you can't have your title.
I have no problems with Harry and Meghan or other members of the royal family doing whatever they want, and I think probably without those titles.
I think Meghan's been treated abominably by the press and the media generally. And I mean, it's a natural consequence of the decision they've taken to step back from being in the front line of the royal family.
Well, when Harry and Meghan decided to up sticks and move to the US, much noise was made about their new brand, Sussex Royal, with trademarks for everything from pyjamas to pencils, and how it could make the pair millions. Well, their plans were dealt a blow this week when the Queen said no. Royal watcher Hugo Vickers explained the monarch's decision.
I think that the Queen has to preserve the dignity of the royal family, and the royal family are really there to support the Queen, who hasn't got time to do all the things that she's asked to do, and that is their primary role. If they then go out independently, well, that's up to them, but they shouldn't be using royal titles and royal connections for purposes of branding. I have considerable concern on their behalf, because I think that it's one thing to be Prince Harry working within the system, indeed Meghan also working within the system, in which you have the whole of the royal machine behind you, you have the Commonwealth to support, and you're going out in a non-profit making way to basically promote the Commonwealth, promote Britain, to help people. It's all very altruistic. If I could put it sort of like this, a figure in a uniform on the balcony of Buckingham Palace to a guy with a beard and a woolly hat coming down from an aeroplane, and that's a very different image. And so I wonder whether he won't lose some of the status which people will want for branding purposes. The Queen has been incredibly generous, and she's left the door wide open. There's a lot of talk about probationary periods, time to see if it works or not. And unlike what happened, for example, and I know it was a different situation with the Duke of Windsor once he abdicated, when the door shut very firmly behind him, and he was not welcome back. With Prince Harry, he is, I think, very much welcome back.
Charlotte, this is a major blow, is it not?
What are they going to call themselves? Because H&M's already taken. They've got their little crown on top of their H&M.
Well, are they allowed to even have that?
Come off.
Yeah,
They'll have to get rid of that.
I thought they could just put an E on the end and be Sussex Royale.
Yeah, it's such a good way to get around the
like
problem,
how they do the burger in McDonald's France.
Exactly.
Very good. What do you think, Guy? Was that naive of them, or?
Well, on a technical level, it's very naive of them, because there are lots of very strict laws about governing royal branding. There's a Royal Warrant Holders Association. It's actually an area that their vast team of trademark experts and lawyers should probably have flagged earlier, and clearly didn't. In terms of where they go from here, I mean, I don't know whether is it possible that they try this experiment and it just doesn't work out, and in a couple of years' time they come back and become full-time working royals again.
Well, they've left him that option, haven't they? They've said he can take back his military titles in a year, which is really clever, I think.
It's Meghan who doesn't want to have sandwiches in church halls, really, isn't it? It's,
But people change their mind.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I've been to Vancouver Island. It's very nice. I'm not sure I'd want to live there forever.
But I mean, this is the point of it. I don't understand why they had to have this sort of dramatic break in the first place. What they should have done, I mean, I said this ages ago, is they should have just said, look, we're finding this all a bit much. We're just going to take a sabbatical, and then we'll come back and we'll decide what the way forward. Instead of which they sort of went nuclear, and now they're in a situation where actually I don't think they can realistically
and
come
now
back.
it feels like the Queen has slightly gone nuclear.
Yeah.
Do you think that this, what seems to me a sudden sort of like shutting of the gates on that brand, is that got anything to do with that recent speech where he was reportedly paid a lot of money to?
I don't think so, because I think it's all about rules and protocols, and if nothing else, the Queen sticks to rules and protocols. I mean, I wonder, getting back to the question of whether they could come back, in 4 or 5 years, young Archie's going to be school age, and then they'll have to make some decisions. And I don't see, they'll have to live somewhere with a sort of suitable schools and everything. That could precipitate a move back to the UK. You
assuming they're still married.
Sarah, the cynicism is just, it's heartbreaking.
So sorry. I'm
but
sorry, I didn't
think,
mean to say that.
I mean, surely, that Disney contract that was plumped for is going to become even more lucrative now and more valuable. She's going to have to go back to films, right?
Yeah, the more drama they create, the more valuable they are at the moment, but eventually that'll disappear and she's going to have to start doing some work, I think.
Well, speaking of that, apparently they are returning to the UK. That was announced this week. But what kind of reception do we think the public will
it's going to be
have
so
for them?
awkward.
Do you
It's going to be
think?
so awkward. They're doing a Commonwealth shindig with all the other members of the royal family. It's going to be very awkward for them, I think, surely.
I think they've still got their fans, though. I mean,
oh yes,
you know,
they definitely do have a lot
Twitter
of fans.
lights up with
she has
comments
a lot
for
of
me
fans.
every time this show goes.
She has a lot of fans, and that's fair enough, and
Yeah.
so does he. But I mean, you know, I don't know what Harry's going to do. I mean, he's got 1 A-level or in art or
I
something.
know.
Hasn't he? Two.
And he got 2 E's, which is quite an achievement at
Right.
Eton.
Did he actually do them?
Well, that's the other. That's the $1 million question, isn't it?
But he's doing talks with bankers and they run huge companies, and they've got Harry with an A-level talking.
But it's coming back to what Sarah said. It's because at the moment he's a royal, and that's quite impressive to have on a stage somewhere.
Yeah.
But I just wonder.
But if in 5 years' time
what he's going to keep talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's the boss
I mean,
of JP
and the
Morgan?
other thing is, I think he can do. I mean, I think all his charity stuff, I mean, his Invictus Games stuff and everything was perfect. He was brilliant at all of that. That was absolutely what he was born to do, and he should have. You know, I hope he carries on doing. He is doing that.
He's doing one more Invictus Games thing in Holland.
Well,
yeah.
it seems to like genuinely mean a lot to him.
Yes, I mean that's
yeah.
obviously what he should be doing. But I just think beyond that, it's hard. It's hard to see. And of course, the reason that the Invictus Games have been such a success is because they were done within the framework of the royal titles
And his military and his military titles.
Yes, exactly. So he's jettisoning both of those things.
Does he have a 5-year plan? It doesn't seem to me like he does.
The thing is, I totally respect their desire to pull back, because I understand that it was all too much for them.
But I'm with
that's
Guy. It doesn't
fine.
feel like they are pulling back.
But exactly. They're
Pulling back and then taking $1 million check.
Exactly. That's the thing. I was quite sympathetic towards them until they then went and worked for JP Morgan.
Oh,
I wonder what they do. What are they going to do all day? I mean, yoga and...
No, I read the other day that he bought his own sandwich for lunch.
Oh, MG.
What was it?
I don't know.
I'm always interested in what people have for lunch.
Yes, I mean, he's having an
He's a man of the
ordinary
people
life.
now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's buying his own sandwich. He's making serious, major choices about his own life.
I think with the royals, you could tell them it's £50 for a cheese sandwich, wouldn't you? And they'd probably believe you.
I bet Meghan told him what filling to get. Vegan filling.
Anyway, we've heard from our panel all their views. Let's hear again from the people.
Constitutional monarchy's not been a really bad thing for the UK. And if you compare it to, let's say, the US system and what they end up with, it's not been that bad a deal.
I think I'll definitely vote for them. I think it's good to have a bit of structure around. And I think that what they stand for and their values are really good for everyone.
I really don't think there's a better alternative. I think presidents are an expensive business.
I definitely vote for retaining the royal family. And there's one overriding reason, and that's because having a queen or a king stops anyone else having absolute power.
I would definitely vote to retain the monarchy. In fact, I wouldn't really be in favour of having a referendum at all. I think it's completely unnecessary. It's obvious they do a good job.
I think that the Queen is an essential figurehead, but the others are just a family.
I think they do an excellent job for government, for basically tourism. I mean, why would you come to London except for the royal family?
Well, this weekend, You magazine takes a close look at the unstoppable rise of the Duchess of Cambridge to a position of style icon. An analysis of her looks over the past few months showed that she is definitely having something of a blue period. It's the colour dominating whatever she's worn over the past 6 months. Our senior stylist, Sophie Dearden, has been taking a closer look.
Spring Summer 20 is going to be full of blue. Historically, the colour is associated with art, the military, business, and of course, the royal family. Their love of the colour is a long-standing tradition. In 2012, Vogue magazine found that the Queen wore blue for a third of the year. That's nearly 3 times more than any other colour. Kate Middleton has also made a habit of wearing blue for some of her biggest moments. In 2010, we saw her perfectly coiffed on the world stage to announce her engagement to Prince William. She wore a dark royal blue dress which matched her sapphire engagement ring down to a T. We then saw a more vulnerable side to the Duchess outside the Lindo wing when she'd just given birth to Prince George. She looked effortless in a pale baby blue dress by British designer Jenny Packham. Whilst Kate might feel right at home wearing blue, colour psychologist Angela Wright has said it's not all about the wearer. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and blue actually grabs the attention of the audience too.
What we actually see is reflected light bouncing off coloured objects. In the retina, they're converted into electrical impulses that pass to the brain, to the part of the brain that governs so many of our functions. It's called the hypothalamus. So in the case of blue, the blue wavelength of light acts on the part of the brain that governs clear thought. But in practice, that suggests that you know what you're doing, you're competent, you're efficient, you take your time about things, sensible and reliable.
Kate isn't the only one to favour the colour scheme. In 1985, Diana famously wore a navy gown to the White House where she danced with actor John Travolta. In 1997, Diana then auctioned this dress and it sold for £100,000 and all the proceeds went to AIDS charities. Blue has certainly proved to be a showstopper for some of Britain's biggest names. Even the Queen herself loves to command attention, having reportedly said, "If I were to wear beige, nobody would know who I am." Kate's style is classic and consistent. It says she's a safe pair of hands and a reliable future queen.
So Charlotte, do you approve of the blue period, sitting there resplendent in your blue, on your blue chair?
Well, I think it's a really boring reason, I'm afraid. I think it's because she has a blue ring on. I think it just goes with her ring. I mean, it's a whopper of a ring. So
that's the problem when you wear a massive sapphire.
It's so much more versatile.
That's what I find.
So much more versatile.
So much more versatile.
Presumably, you care deeply about this guy.
Hugely. All I'd say is actually, blue is the colour I wear when I just, frankly, I've given up. I think it's
me
safe.
too. Me too. I've totally given up.
I think it's the equivalent. I mean, it's most women just wear black, right? Apart from you, obviously, because you're a fashion icon.
So I'm basically a clown.
No, you're a fashion icon. But I think it's less harsh than black, and it looks good in the daylight. Black looks terrible in the daylight. It always looks really, really, really drab. Whereas blue is easy. She doesn't have to worry about getting croissant. It's pretty sort of easy to wear.
And the thing is,
she's never eaten a croissant in her life.
But also she does have this. I mean, I do love her, but she does have this quite doors to manual aesthetic, doesn't she? She's a little bit.
I think I would have agreed with you about 2 years ago, but I think she's edged it up
but blue
a little
is quite
bit.
British
Blue's very safe, though, isn't
there's
it?
many.
Do we think blue's boring? I mean, is that the big unsaid word here?
I think it
boring.
depends. I mean, your blue is not boring. Your blue is not boring. Navy blue is quite boring, but it's a nice colour and it suits her.
But it's safe and it's regal and it is a calculation, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's. Do you think
it goes with everything? It goes with brown. It goes with everything. And actually, she looks. I mean, she was wearing the other day. She was wearing a very long sort of. She goes for these quite military styles, which I really like on her. There's always a little bit of a button or a.
It's always rather strict, isn't it?
Yeah, I quite like that. There's a little edge to it, a little sort of.
That's
slightly,
what I think.
Disciplinarian edge to her outfits.
I think so. I think the hemlines are better.
Yeah.
She's got rid of the nude pumps, which I really hated.
Oh, so boring.
But the other thing I was wondering is because when she does events with the Queen, I feel like there's been a meeting and the Queen owns
the Queen
bold
does that thing of
human highlighter thing.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be the foil to
the Queen
that, right?
does all in one colour, so that she could be seen 500 miles away by a grateful her grateful subjects. But so I think you're right. I think that Kate is just is. I think actually the navy works quite well for her. I think for now it's good. Red is too difficult, She can't always wear flowery dresses. I mean, she does look very nice in flowery dresses.
I think it's the red that tends to look quite Virgin Atlantic.
Yeah, there you go,
The Battle of the Airlines with Kate Middleton.
Yes. Could she afford to be a bit more exciting, or do you think
that's the criticism. If you're going to make a criticism, I probably wouldn't say it critically, but William and Kate are both, in some respects, quite dull people.
Yeah, but look what happens when they're too exciting.
They do what they're meant to do.
Do you think they're dull in real life? Or do you think that they've got this studied public persona?
No, I mean, I think you can't be, flashy and you can't be flashy and impulsive if you're going to do the job they're going to do. So in some respects, they have the perfect characteristics for the role they find themselves in. Could they be a bit more edgy? Could she be a bit more edgy? If we're talking just about fashion, then maybe. I mean, but I quite like.
I think she can be quite. She can be quite a little bit. She is a little bit edgier when she does special occasions. You know, when she goes to sort of the BAFTAs or whatever. She always makes a bit of. She looks pretty good.
She has to try quite hard though to be edgy. It's not natural.
That's the thing. Do you think Dull's a bit harsh as a criticism about whether that's her wardrobe or the public demeanour?
I think Dull's what they want her to be.
So you would say she's dull?
I think she's dull, and I think it's good. We don't want another crazy royal at the moment. I just want everyone to stay calm.
I mean, let's be honest, the Queen was never a sort of particularly snazzy dresser, was she?
I don't know. I think I've come to really appreciate
she'd have that fantastic tiny little waist thing. But you know, she has always been very reliable and solid. And I think Kate is doing the same, and I think that's good. That's what we want.
That's so what we want.
The only thing I had issue with was that period in the 70s where the Queen had those sort of like beret hats with the almost like the Australian corkscrews hanging off them.
And she went through a bit of a caftani phase as well, but then everyone did in the 70s.
There's nothing wrong with a caftan, Sarah Vine. Nothing wrong at all.
No, but I went to see the exhibition of her clothes at Buckingham Palace, and they are beautiful. They are. If they ever bring them out again, it's definitely worth a detour.
It's history, isn't it?
Yeah, really amazing.
As are we today, I'm afraid. You can read more about the Duchess's style choices and more in You magazine, only in the Mail on Sunday. That is all we have time for today. Many thanks to my panel, Sarah, Guy and Charlotte, and to you for watching. We'll see you next time on Palace Confidential.